July, August, September, October, November, December, people started talking about COVID. January, February, March, not even 9 months after we purchased it, we were closed. There was nothing going on here. Like, I use this analogy, it's not a very good one, but you could have shot a cannon through the dock and not hit anyone in like April of 2020. And so I looked around and Colin was like the most senior dock hand, and so I called him into my office and I said, hey, do you want a job? Because you seem to know more about like how this place runs than anyone. I'm urgently in the market for someone to help me run this. And thankfully he said yes. We've been a team ever since. But yeah, it's kind of like if you're in the army and someone goes down, you get a field promotion. That's exactly what happened in his case. He was just the first person that I found, and really the only logical person to talk to, because he was the only person left that actually knew how, like all the little bits and pieces, of how the dock runs. Because the dock is not just sort of the human connection. It is that, and that's the most important thing. But there's a whole layer of systems underneath it that make that work on a day-to-day basis. And if we do a good job, you'll never know.
It's seamless.
But if the internet goes down, everybody's in a state, like immediately, and we need to fix it immediately. But Colin is the guy that knows how to fix all that stuff. He's good with people, he's great with people, but he also knows all the behind the scenes, in the walls, up in the ceiling stuff. And
literally I've seen him up in the ceiling.
Exactly.
Literally I've seen Colin like installing lights on the first floor. When you say it, like
he knows all the stuff. So, and he has a very wide range of skills. Yeah, we were very lucky. I would like to think that he feels lucky too, but it was definitely a happy accident for the dock that he was both available and willing in our moment of need.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because he was the first episode I shot, and just how all his previous jobs or volunteer work have led him up to almost like this moment of like the perfect person at the perfect time.
Yeah.
And one thing I do want to mention too is like I kind of describe the dock as like a pirate ship, and we're all kind of pirates in on it, in that we're not always politically correct necessarily. Like you're allowed a lot of like free range, or you're allowed to be yourself.
Sure.
And Colin's almost like the guy who just manages that sort of what's maybe over the top versus maintaining the calm.
Yes, exactly.
He's like that perfect person for that.
In Fernwood, we our first big social enterprise was the Cornerstone Cafe, and for those who've been around Victoria and Fernwood long enough, they remember it fondly, I'd like to think. But I used to say there's a wider range of behavior that's considered normal at the Cornerstone Cafe than is considered normal at Starbucks. You can do and say things at the Cornerstone Cafe that would get you thrown out of Starbucks. And I don't mean like being rude or disrespectful to people. I just mean like being genuine and being honest and being a little bit boisterous. And Cornerstone Cafe, people would be sitting playing the banjo, or acting, practicing their scene, for rehearsal or whatever. It's like anything, people were very tolerant, people were very open, people were very friendly. Yeah, you'd see seniors talking to high school students and so on. If people did that at Starbucks, they'd think they were creepy. Whereas in Fernwood, it was just, we call it the neighborhood's living room. And so that's kind of the spirit in a lot of senses that's animated and motivated me in building out the dock as we have, really thinking through, we're being really deliberate about building a community and putting in place this sort of physical and systems layer that's needed to support people to be comfortable and to be themselves, but also to get some work done.
Yeah, and I was gonna say too, like it's not something you can bottle, like the magic or the secret sauce, whatever you guys want to call it. It's like kind of maintained through everybody who comes in and out of this place where, not to knock on but like from what I've been told, and I haven't been there, like I've just been told it has like a very corporate-y kind of vibe.
Right.
From people who've been at both places. They're like, the Dock's almost like the, not underdog, but the scrappy kind of like fighter,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Like again, and this isn't a knock on any of the other co-working spaces around. The Dock, not pretentious. Everybody here is comfortable being themselves, talking to their neighbors. You know, I've heard in some places people are like, you know, like we got to sort of sit in my box and be quiet but not bother anyone. Whereas there's a freer and looser feel here, I think. And we've sort of encouraged also, like on the ground floor, to be more open and feel free to be having, you know, open conversations, talking with your neighbors and so on. The third floor is a little bit quieter, and if people need to sort of buckle down and get some work done. And we've got people who, like Zoe, we have people who've been on the first floor, and when they're not facing a deadline, they're happy to hang out there and shoot the breeze with their neighbor and so on. But then when they need to get some work done, they move upstairs, work for a few days or a week or so, and meet their thing, and then get back to a more social space. So I think it's cool. I mean, and again, that goes sort of back to my graduate degree in environmental studies, whatever. My thinking about this social space as an ecosystem actually sort of is informed by my studies, like going way back, right? But I've told the team, and I've asked the team to think about and observe, like very carefully observe, people in the space in the same way that they would observe organisms in the environment as a biologist or a zoologist or whatever. And like, why does this thing live here and that thing lives there? It's like, what is this thing getting from this part of the ecosystem and that thing's getting from that part of the ecosystem? We don't want this to be like one mono space where all the spaces are the same. We want to create darker spaces, lighter spaces, noisier spaces, quieter spaces, spaces that support and encourage people to have conversations, and places that support and encourage people to sort of focus. And so we've tried to build that. Obviously the business plan has to work too, right? Like it has to, you know, earn enough money to pay for itself, and maybe some extra would be nice too. We've tried to build the space in such a way that it can accommodate as many different people as possible at different times of the day when they're doing different pieces, doing different parts of their work or doing different things. So yeah, it's just a really comfortable place to be, and that really goes, like I said, goes back to my studies in environmental studies and environmental design, thinking like, how does this space encourage people to act or not act in a certain way, and how does this space make people feel comfortable? And so we really tried to incorporate as much of that as possible.
Like speaking like from a personal point of view, I used to work in busy production offices, managing a lot of kids' cartoons.
Right.
But I was so used to all the chaos, it was just normal. And then when we started to have to work remotely, I'm one of those people who just never worked. Like I sucked at working remote. Discovering this place was just like finding the sun for the first time, of like, oh, this is exactly what I was looking for, even though I wasn't kind of looking for it.
Right.
Like I found this place by accident. And so now most of the time you can find me sort of in between all the staff, because I like the chaos and the calamity, because it almost reminds me of like
You're busy.
back when I was working in production offices. So I don't know if it's because of the COVID post. For me personally, I work better within the chaos, knowing that I can go to a quiet area. But for me, it's helped me unsurmountable ways of just being in the mix. In the least of the year I've been here, it's kind of grows almost organically, where people come and go, but the magic to the place has never kind of left. Mm-hmm. And I was talking to Lee earlier, like part of the secret sauce, and you can sort of correct me if I'm wrong, is you're allowed to be weird here. You're allowed to let your freak flag fly a little bit. No one's gonna, you know, like obviously stuff comes up, but like at the end of the day, you're very much allowed just to be yourself, and whatever business or personal project you're working on, like everyone's super encouraging, and it's just nice to have that freedom. Not to knock on But
No,
but
because they have a beautiful space and doing good stuff too.
yeah, I've actually never
Yeah.
been there. I've just been told secondhandedly that people have been
Yeah.
at both spots. Are like
Yeah.
the dog's kind of cooler, like a little bit of not the underdog, because you guys aren't an underdog, but like
Yeah.
scrappier.
Just different,
Yeah.
like just a different with a different vibe and folks tend to self-select into where they feel comfortable. So, but I would say here, yeah, like that inclusivity of people being able to walk in and feel that they can be who they are is like core to what we're doing. I love the art on the walls. I also really love the depth of the work that people here are doing. So when we have opportunities to do lunch and learns and to hear what people are doing, I'm always like just incredibly inspired by like how values driven it is, how deep it is, how I was like, oh, I didn't know that. And then we get to know each other a bit more, and it's a very inspiring place to work. People aren't making widgets, right?
Yeah, it's been crazy. Like I've gone to a lot of the design, like monthly design courses, and I'm not like a design heavy focused guy, but it's amazing what you learn and pick up on.
Yeah.
And just the opportunities you guys presented, like I got my training in first aid here, I got my NAC salon, or, you know, I got a lot of first aid, and I'm trying to be a community support worker as well. And it's all thanks to you guys that I was able to get all the training.
Yeah.
Just so happen to be here, so I just wanted to thank you for that.
That's great.
How has having children, I guess, affected your overall outlook on how you pursue work, or just your outlook on community in general?
Definitely. I think that there's a place where, you know, we hold this earth and we hold community, people. It's not ours, it's theirs. You know, like we continue it through generations. I think I always knew that, of course, without children, but it really drives home when you have them and you see them, that it's so critical. And how do you build community? You know, you go through a lot of different communities as kids, you know, grow up, because there's the elementary school, then all the different sports, and then, you know, different challenges or supports or, you know, opportunities that children in general go through. So I think I'm very dedicated, and I also think, you know, I'm an entrepreneur, and I like that my kids get to see that they can choose to do whatever they want in this world, and there's lots of different paths, but it's okay to choose a path that wasn't going into a job. And not that jobs aren't fantastic, because they are, but I like that my kids get to see that I did a little differently at this point in my life. So they've seen me have a job, and they've also seen me have business and really try to make a difference in the world. My daughter helped me tremendously with the TEDx talk. She would go over it and review, and really became part of the process.
Cool, so it sounds like you had a pretty good support group then behind you before going into that.
Yes.
One of my last questions is, and this is a theoretical, is if the dock had an unlimited budget, an unlimited amount of money, if the dock did have unlimited money, which, you know, obviously is not the case, but what's your dream scenario?
The founder of the dock originally was in Chinatown, in this kind of really funky location, but they quickly outgrew that space, and it had a number of drawbacks. It was a really, really old building, and so it didn't have sort of the modern systems. There were some challenges, let's say, with that space. But he was a savvy entrepreneur, and he saw that this building was empty because, of course, the building across the street was not built. It was a big hole in the ground in those days. So this building was basically empty, and the landlord, I think, was probably quite desperate for tenants, but also didn't want to put a lot of money into the space. And so, you know, when people come to the third floor, which is the original floor of the dock, like in this building, you know, you can see that there's two different styles of carpet, and it's looking pretty old and maybe a little raggedy. All of those characteristics were what enabled the founder to get a really, really affordable lease in this building initially. So if I had unlimited resources, after the pandemic started to sort of taper off, the dock actually started to really succeed, I would say, in 2022. And we were very encouraged by the progress that we made in sort of bringing community back in the dock in 2022. At that time, the first floor was still vacant, and it had probably been vacant for like 10 years or something.
Wow.
And so we thought, it's time to see if the landlord wants the deal on the first floor. So we approached the landlord. Yes, there was interest, but we also needed considerable investment because the ground floor was just bare concrete and, you know, a shell. It wasn't built out. And so we did the business plan, we raised some money, we signed a lease with the landlord, we hired architects and engineers and construction managers, and they hired all the tradespeople, and anyways, it all got built out. Lawyers and accountants and realtors and, you know, all those things. Yeah, it was a considerable investment. Unfortunately, we didn't necessarily have all of the money that we needed to also sort of do the third floor to the same standard. And if I had, you know, sort of unlimited resources or relatively more resources than we do, I would like to not necessarily redesign the walls and so on, but replace the carpets, do some of the painting, install some of the features that we've installed on the ground floor, like, you know, the better projection units, better meeting room furniture, and even just the picture rails on the walls so that we can have community art installed without like damaging the walls and so on. Like, yeah. All those things actually, I think, make a really high quality space. And so those would be the investments that we would make. Staffing the dock, I think, has a great staff complement.
Oh, we should get a bubble machine. Those are awesome.
Bubbles.
Bubbles.
Do we need more people? Like, we could do more if we had more people? I don't think you want a space that's so scripted and programmed within an inch of its life that people don't feel like, you know what I mean? Like,
A little loose, like keep it a little, like you're.
you want it a little bit sort of open and spontaneous.
So I have to ask, why is there a dinosaur in the first floor?
What do you mean? It's always been here. But seriously, today is Draw a Dinosaur Day. So one of our members, Dan, brought in one of his dinosaurs. This is Gerald. And Gerald is here for inspiration, motivation, and just to join our little community for the day. So, yeehaw!
And can I see your photo?
Oh, absolutely. I was very inspired.
Happy National Draw a Dinosaur Day!
You want enough things happening that people feel like, hey, did you hear about that thing happening down at the dock? Like, I'm going down there to find out about whatever, or to see the screening of the punk rock barber. We want the dock to be, there to be enough room in the sort of calendar for people to do what they want the dock to be able to do. And again, that goes back to my experience of running a community center for as long as I did, that when we tried to program the community center, people didn't come.
Yeah.
But when we invited people in from the community to lead activities that they wanted to see at the community center, one or two things happened. It either took off and then they kept coming back and we did more and more of it, or it failed and then we just went on with the next thing. But people got to experiment, they got to try things, and they got to learn what works and what didn't. Over time, led to a much more animated and engaging community space, rather than having, you know, people sitting around trying to imagine what people wanted. We just let people tell us, and it worked way better.
Yeah, it's really cool hearing like legitimately just sort of the early days of the dock, because obviously I hear things from Colin and the staff, but to hear it from how
we're not the
it started.
founders, like I say, but it was half the size in terms of the third floor.
Mm-hmm.
Now, like it was the full third floor, but there was half the people here. It was
Well,
pretty
and you
dead.
guys have done a wonderful
It was
job
pretty
of
dead.
fostering community. Like,
Yeah,
you guys
thank
have
you.
nailed it.
That's
Like,
great.
it always feels like home coming here, and it's fun to be weird and be allowed to be weird, at least from my point.
Exactly, and that's what I mean when I say like a wider range of behavior is tolerated. Like I say, it's not just people being themselves. If you try being yourself in a lot of places, you get thrown out.
Did the original vision from the dock, has it changed compared to when you guys took it over to what you're essentially rebooted it for better?
Mm-hmm.
The dock nowadays, has that shifted compared to what you were kind of originally envisioning when you took it over 10 years ago?
Oh, we only took it over
Oh, 4
years ago?
2019?
It was like, yeah, halfway through 2019, and then 2020, COVID hit, and then we were in the 2 years of COVID. I would say that, I don't know if the original vision has changed in terms of wanting to be like a inclusive, vibrant, social impact space. Like, that still exists.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've just continued to deepen that vision, right? So continue to add things, put structure around that So you sort of have, like even things like having karaoke nights and having games nights and having like doing things that actively build relationship and community in addition to running courses and having lunch and learns. And so it's just finding ways to deepen the community and to elevate other people's work, I think is sort of that, as you talk about like the magic of the dock, but also like just keep on doing that and it works.
Yeah, I mean, part of the magic, that just kind of what I witnessed from afar is you guys don't keep too tight of a, pretty relaxed in terms of like where you're allowed to, what kind of events you have here, and like what's great is like looking up like what's happened at the dock this week, because one week in the evening or whatever be completely different than another week, and it's just always shifting. There's always interesting stuff going on. You guys have really fostered a really cool community. I think obviously you guys are watching what's happening, but also a part of the magic too is like you guys aren't so tight wound. You're very open to all kinds of stuff. So I just wanted to sort of thank you and share my appreciation of how open you guys are with any kinds of events. Like there might be a trans comedy night one night, there might be a film screening another night, there might be a karaoke or DJing another night. And it's just cool to have that mix of stuff.
And we love it when people are like, hey, we should do that. And we're like, yeah. like that's also like the sign of a really healthy functioning community, is when different people are like, wow, this is the way that we'd like to add something or do an event or gather a group or have a committee. I don't know, we don't really have committees, but have like a group of stuff, and then it's sort of like, like how do we help support make that happen? So it's like lots of ideas. The ideas don't always come from the dock team or don't always come from scale. It really does come from community.
That's good. It reminds me of like the whole spaghetti wall effect of just throw spaghetti against the wall and you see what sticks kind of thing. And then are you worried then, because obviously where we're at today in society, it's not exactly the most stable place. I mean, pick one of 100 issues going on, whether it's housing or the mental crisis or, there aren't as many jobs out there as there was even 2 years ago where places couldn't find enough people to be hired, and now it's not that at all. And I mean, basically we're in a recession whether people say it or not. So are you worried about that for your children, or just sort of the way society and the way I guess we're going, or are you optimistic?
I'd say I lean towards optimism. I do think that there's a moment for a rise of the phoenix. I'm optimistic because of the work I do, and I see these incredible organizations and the new ones and the grassroots ones that are popping up, and that people really understand now that message that everything needs to be driven by profit and that'll help everybody is just not true. And you can see it more and more, and those that are doing really good work in organizations, they're starting to become more financially strong, take up more space. And so I am optimistic that this new generation, they're coming into a world that I certainly didn't grow up in. And they can really do anything, and they think so creatively and differently. So I'm going to land on optimism that they're going to be able to, and we're going to support, but be able to start solving some of these things just naturally, because there's a lot more people, if you look in the world today, regardless of what job they do, they want purpose in their life. They don't just want to go and make a paycheck and come back. And so there's a shift in human, I would say, consciousness that is supporting going to social impact. And there's also an awakening, I think, in our world of people being more conscious. And so I am hopeful. Are my kids going to get to buy a house? I don't know. But maybe that model is different now. So there's definitely, we're at a changing point, I think, and an evolving point in our world.
I hate to bring it up, but I think COVID had a lot to do with sort of people changing, where you had lawyers becoming jazz musicians, just as an example of like, what do I really want to do? I want to make tacos on the street, I don't want to work at, this office where I'm in a cubicle where someone just passed away at one of the big banking firms, and they were at their desk for 4 days before they found the person. And I was like,
That's just, COVID was so difficult for a lot of reasons, but there was such beauty in it as well, because I do think it allowed people to have a moment of realignment, reawakening, just that sort of thing. And we also saw the world. like when you saw this heavy kinds of industries go down, just how much the natural world very quickly recovered.
How would you like to see both Scale, Thrive, and the Dock evolve in the next 10 years?
Well, in Scale, for thriving nonprofits, which is where I focus a lot on, you know, our goal is to be one of the top learning innovation hubs for nonprofits, charities across North America. So that's where I'd like it to evolve, because I know as that takes place, that means that there are an incredibly amount of organizations that have that financial diversification towards greater impact, and they're having greater impact for the world and the community, for our people. It's just, I'm excited for that. That's where I sit in the focus. I think there for the Dock, I love it. I want this to continue to grow and be a home for people, for work and events, connection and collaboration. It's amazing the collaborations that take place just because, you know, you come to the Dock and you work out of the Dock, and then you meet somebody, you know, in the kitchen, and then you start to talk. Those kind of relationships and collaborations are just incredible. So we want the Dock to continue to grow and be one of the top, and it is one of the top co-working spaces in our city right now. And so we continue to do that. So we've expanded, and we expanded, now we're double this size. So who knows, maybe we just keep growing to bring more people together. And for Thrive Impact Fund, I think it's fantastic. I think the more resources, the more we can put resources into impact, the better off we all are. Whatever that sort of looks like as it continues to grow is fantastic. And so I just think that I'm happy for them all to just keep growing.
And then just my last question is, if anyone's struggling to figure out what direction to go in life, if they're at a crossroads, like example, I'm at a bit of a crossroads due to the film industry not existing, you know, what advice would you give to someone maybe trying to find their passion or a career and they're not sure, maybe they're stuck?
My advice would be to get quiet with yourself, to really, you know, I started meditating a few years ago in COVID, and it changed my life. Like, it really helps me see things differently and hear those whispers from the universe. And I think that the more you can be quiet with yourself and just be able to hear is critical in those paths. And when you get that whisper to try something, even if it's like kind of outrageous thinking, just try it. Because you never know where those paths lead. And because we live in the world we live in today, I don't think we have to go in the typical routes anymore. And so when you can feel that place that brings you joy, I often, when I'm trying to make a decision, I just sit with it and I think about, if I go this way, and you can physically feel inside your body if that brings you joy or anxiety. And I lean towards all the decisions that bring me joy. And so I just know that I'm on the right path. And so for somebody trying to figure things out, I would just kind of keep leaning towards that joy. Know that wherever that passion lies, the money will follow. Like, those pieces will follow. The other piece of advice that was given to me once, and it really actually helped me in that moment. I didn't really know where to go, and I was sort of stuck, and I couldn't find the perfect job that I wanted. So somebody said, take a different one and just take the pressure off yourself. And I did that. And it's funny when I look back of how my life ended up, that taking that job and that was the first time I worked in it was in poverty, in social impact, it was in communities in our mainland and have a little bit more struggles, and working in that community, it led me to something. It led me to Vision Vancouver, which then led me to Oakland's, which then led me, it's amazing how that journey changed for me. So I'd say just follow the joy and the passion, and just know and believe that everything will work out for you.
And then just have any final thoughts or comments for the audience who are watching or listening?
I'm really excited that we've shared this time together, and I'm grateful and appreciative that they listened, and I look forward to connecting with them. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, or come by the Dock. If you're in this region, just come in. We'd love to connect with you and
Yeah, it was free. You can come in for a day for free. So,
Yeah, you
know,
can come in for
check it
a
out.
day for free. Come in and check it out.
Check the
Exactly.
vibes. No, yeah, thanks. I mean, I really feel like you've been a home for both, misfits, and also people aren't misfits, but it's this cool, very eclectic, ever-changing community, and I think you guys have been very smart with the staff you've hired and the volunteers that you guys use, and it's been cool to sort of be a part of it in a small way.
Well, it's definitely incredible people powered, right?
Yeah.
And so it's not us, it's all the people that are here that make this place so special.
One of my last questions is, if the dock had unlimited money, what would you say you had $1 million tomorrow that you had to spend specifically on the dock?
I'd buy the building.
Buy the building.
Yeah.
That's a good answer.
I would buy the building
Yeah.
because I would really love it to be like a community spaced, owned by community, right? And to be able to take all 4 floors, and there's so much that it could be done. It's in a great location. I'd buy the building. That would be the first thing we would do with $1 million. And if we weren't able to buy the building,
But we'll call it 3 million or 5 million just for,
I will.
yeah.
I would buy the building. We would host, like we would begin to do deeper level programming. I'd like to create spaces just for people who are in startup, right? Like if you've got a startup nonprofit, you've got a startup like impact business, if you've got to start, because that's often a tricky time where finances are tight and support is needed. And so by having resources that would allow us to put something dedicated around that would be really great. I'd replace the carpet. Can I say that?
Yeah, you're allowed to say that. Yeah.
I'd replace the carpet.
I think Lee mentioned the carpet.
I know, we
earlier.
all are like, all we want to do is replace the carpet.
I'll be honest, I'm
Yeah.
probably one of the people who ruined the carpet, so I apologize.
It's okay. I would build when we own the building, we would like to build like an upstairs deck
Like
and gathering
patio,
space and
yeah.
patio, right? Like with like a gazebo. Like there's so many things that could be done. And so space-wise, we've got our list. What we do programming-wise, that's what I would put in.
Sky's the limit. Well, one day we'll get the 5 million.
We got the 5
The
mil.
5 mil.
Yeah, come on,
We'll help.
TELUS.
Yeah, come on, podcast. And then my very last question. What advice would you give your younger self that you might have not known when you were first starting out and fresh out of uni? If any, it might be one of those things where you need to go through the trial by fire as well to learn, those lessons.
What advice would I give? My advice would be probably sit in curiosity, ask questions, and at the same time be bold, be unafraid.
Well, I think you've already accomplished all of that.
I don't know,
That's
but
good.
that's what I would give to my. But I mean, when you're young, that's the learning, right? When you're young, you don't know how to be bold and not be afraid, and how to be curious and ask questions and not make assumptions. That's part. I mean, some people are born with that, but a lot of people, it's a journey.
That's
get
good
that.
one, is not make assumptions. I had to learn that later in life.
Well, because things seem really simple when we're young sometimes. I remember it seems black and white that I could solve the problems of the world, and as I got older, I'm like, oh, I cannot do it alone, and these problems are complex, and we need to have many hands on the elephant in order to see the elephant.
Yeah, and two, there's only so much you can do in a 24-hour period, and it's
Or
like-
in 35 years of work, right? Like we have. So how do we help just shift and move the needle in a place that we feel passionate and have some talent and genius around, and hopefully leave it and bring along the next generation so they get to also do the same, continue. Yeah.